think you should be able to unmute if you can, and then I'll remove the spotlight and it will jump to anyone who wants to ask a question. So if you want to hold the space bar down, we should see who you are. Or is it unmuted everyone now? Oh no. What have I done? Has anyone got any questions? I can't see you all on the screen because there's a lot of you, so maybe just jump in, pipe up.
Buster.
Oh, Joseph, hello mate.
Okay. So like is there like a way of like, you know, changing like the harmonies kind of like on the iReal Pro track?
Yes.
Like for instance changing the chords into arpeggios. You know,
yeah, you can edit all of that. Everything's totally editable. There is a button on there if you want to, and of course you can create your own ones from scratch. There's nothing to stop you doing that. But I've done all the legwork for you. Basically, it's what I've done. That was the whole point. But also, I think it's like, how do you use them? You know, what musical ways can we find to practice where the technology helps us in our practice? I think if we get it the wrong way round, you know, we end up not doing much practice and spending a lot of time fiddling around with iReal Pro. So I tried to build all these tracks, so you should be able to find, I mean, it's not everything, but there's an awful lot there. There's pretty much most things that you're most likely to come across are in there. So the idea is you can jump right in, change the key, and bang, you're away. I've tried to cover like most common chord progressions, chord sequences, chord symbols. Yeah, it's pretty exhaustive. So, but of course, yeah, you can build these things for yourself. It's all built into the program. It's very, I mean, well, you know, it depends how technologically minded you are. It's quite easy to do.
So how do you change like the harmony, you know, like from
Well,
chords to arpeggios?
yeah, you just have to go into the edit screen. I'll just do a quick thing. I don't really want to get too bogged down in the technology because, you know, there's loads of YouTube videos on how to use this. That's really the best thing. But you can select, basically, you select any track here. Look, so we get this one, and then you go up to the top there. I don't know if you can see my screen here, and see that little pencil sign. That's the edit. So you click on that, and you go edit song, or there's a shortcut, Command E. And then this is where you get into the edit menu, and you can change everything. You can change the chords, you can add loops, you can put repeats in, you can add bars, you can create your own, you know, if you've composed your own music, I think it's really nice, you know, to have that as well. Or you want to work on some longer sequences. I've deliberately kept it to short little, you know, 2 bars, 1 bars, 4 bars, because for me, I think where the work is that we need to do more of, that not enough people work on, is just that drilling that one bit of the tune, you know, just working. And as you know, if you've been to my workshops, we tend to work in 4 and 8 bars, or we'll work through an A section separately until we really get it, and then we do the bridge separately. And I think when you're learning a tune or learning at all, I think there's the danger is to try and just blow through the whole thing, and I really think you're not going to get much out of that. I think you need to break it down, work on the ingredients separately, and I think we need to spend more time on that than we allow ourselves. I think it takes more work, and I think that's what the greats did a lot. I mean, you know, thousands of hours of just working around these changes and things like that. I think we underestimate how much work it takes to really automate that and embed that to the level where we can improvise. And you know, you hear any great jazz musician, there's no shortcuts. They've done a lot of work on this over a very long period of time. And I think what this can allow you to do is just to sort of like, it's like you've got a rhythm section, you know, for you. And I think working in small chunks is the key. I really do. I really believe that. Now, how do I turn this off? Oh, there we go. Great. Fantastic. Sorry, Joseph, does that answer your question? Does that help? I mean, I would suggest you go onto YouTube and look up a YouTube video on how to use iReal Pro. That's not really what today's about. So, but once you get your head around it, it's actually a really good bit of kit. I really like it. I've knocked it in the past because I think there's 2 problems with it. Is it can make us lazy. And I think there's too many people showing up at jam sessions and pulling their phone out, and you look round and everyone's looking at their phone and they're all playing a tune, you know, and it's like, oh, come on, guys, there's literally no communication because no one knows the tune. Why would you play a tune you don't, you know, do some work on it before you get there. And I mean, where it is really handy is when singers want to do it in a different key that you've learned in. That's fine. If they say, oh, you know the tune, you've worked on it, but a singer goes, oh, can we sing this in, you know, F sharp or something? Okay, right, you know, just do it in G, you know. But like that's where it can be useful. You know, if someone wants to do it in a different key, that's fine. It's just this thing of playing tunes you really don't know, that you've got no idea how it goes, and you think you can just pull out an iReal book and sort of smash your way through it. And I don't really think there's much to be gained from that for anyone. Certainly not anyone listening, if there is anyone listening. So I do think it can be a very useful tool if you use it in the right way. And for this sort of work, I think it's fantastic. I think it really is good. You know, making a bossa nova. And I think this is the legwork. This is the wood, you know, the wood shedding that you need to do on your own. Really know the tunes. Really know those turnarounds, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So there's no shortcuts. I'm not offering any quick tip magic beans, you know. But I think if you do some work on like this in this way, I think you'll be surprised actually that it does pay off. It does pay off. And again, you know, in my workshops, I said we do one tune a month. I mean, that a month goes pretty quick. It certainly catches me out. So if you just focus on one tune and really just get to know it and keep working on it, keep working on the ingredients, just work on the last 4 bars. Spend a whole practice session on that last 4 bars. You'll be amazed how much of that you'll learn and it will really embed in. And if you can go on the stage without any music and know that piece, then the whole thing's going to work much better, isn't it? Everyone's going to have a much better time, and you're going to feel better about it as well. So I think this is for the practice at home. I think the iReal Pro should stay at home. There you go. There's a little subtitle, yeah. Not to be seen in public. But there we go. That's just my opinion. I mean, you know, I'm just a drummer, so, you know, take what you can from that. Has anyone got any questions? Happy to keep going for another sort of few minutes.
Buster.
Hello.
Catherine here.
Hi, Catherine.
So Tim does drums and I'm alto sax, but just 2
Oh,
questions.
you're coming on the summer school, aren't you?
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
Right.
Great.
But this has been a bit challenging what you've said today, to be honest, but we have got everything in front of us.
Yeah.
So for me, being a novice, how do you know the notes of those chords that you're using in the...
Well,
you've got to learn it separately, and are they...
there's some work to do there. So obviously, you know, this is the language that we work in, is these chord symbols. So I think just working through some of those chord symbols in one key, just get some... Now I am actually thinking of putting something together, of course, but I've got some ideas. For me, I think the way I like to think is intervals. Okay, so if there is anything like a shortcut for me, I'm always thinking, what is the intervals between those notes? Okay, and I did a big YouTube video on intervals, so if you want to check that out, explaining all the intervals. It's a bit technical because there are names for all the intervals. But if you're thinking, you know, tones, 1.5 tones, 2 tones, semitones, things like that. That for me is how I remember the chords, rather than trying to learn them by rote. That's really not going to help. What you need to do is you need to understand them. You need to understand what those chords, the intervals of the chords are. And for me, then suddenly it all makes sense, because there is a pattern, and there's a logical sequence to all this. There's a beautiful kind of overriding logic to all of this. And I think once you get your head around that, then all the details make more sense. It's figuring out the system.
Yeah, but you've got to know the key. You've got to know the key as well, haven't you?
The key, of course, it's all based around keys. Yeah. But if you're thinking in intervals, then the same thing applies in every key. Yeah, that's the point. That's the point of the intervals.
Do you think I might be better to understand this, because I was a piano player as a child, but I've forgotten most of it, to learn them maybe on the piano where you can see it.
On the piano you can see it. It's visual. Absolutely. Yeah, very visual. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, do it on the piano, then transfer it to your instrument. Okay. And what I would suggest for you is to go back to those first ones where it's just one chord symbol.
Yeah.
And just just try and learn one per session,
Yeah.
and then what you've got to then practice is transposing it. So and everything moves in parallel when you transpose it. So go try it in one key, then try it in another key, and then just get to know some of those chord symbols, because we've got in jazz we use the sevenths. That's the main thing.
Mm.
Pop music and you know not all classical music, but a lot of classical, it's basically triad based. So once you add the seventh, you've got more possible outcomes. So that's all.
Yeah.
But it's not that many. It's very easy to be overwhelmed when for me it was like, oh my goodness, because I had to catch up with a lot of this when I got to college and having only played the drums.
Yeah.
But I'm quite obsessive, so I get really all right, get stuck into. And then I've definitely had some eureka moments when I've been learning music. But when I've connected things I've learned, that's just that. And the other thing is, coming from classical world, it's the same thing, they just give it a different name.
Mm.
So that's the other thing you've got to remember. So and unfortunately with jazz chord symbols, the other problem is they're not always written the same way. There's some inconsistency. So you can have several different chord symbols. They all mean the same thing. So it's understanding that. But there's a lot out there. There's a lot of information out there. So
And just without taking too much time, just the other thing is Tim, because he's doing the drums, and how the iReal Pro can
Well,
help.
I mean, for that, one of the things, again, what changed my life as a drummer was actually the more time I spent on the piano and the more I learned about harmony, the better drummer I became. And what I mean by that is I learned to hear the harmony and I learned to hear the chord symbols. And for me, that changed everything. That changed my life, because as a drummer then I didn't have to count anymore. If I could hear the harmony and hear where everyone else in the band is. So where something like this is really useful for drums, maybe not so much what we've done today, but what you would do is, here we go, I'm going to contradict what I said earlier, put some of the tunes on. Okay, so there's thousands of tunes on there, and if you just play what you're going to get, you're going to just hear the chords. You're just going to hear the bass player and the chords, and you won't hear the melody. And if you can know where you are in the tune by just hearing the chords, and obviously what you can do is turn the drums off, so you can play along with it. So you've got bass and piano, and if you take a tune, so obviously start with the recording. There we go. Take one tune. Learn as many recordings as you can, or get one recording that you really like and listen to it 27 times. That's what I tell all my students. It's got to be minimum of 27 times. And then you get to know it, so you know that recording. And then go to the iReal and listen to the iReal version. And what you're going to hear is the backing track, so you're going to hear it without the melody. So you've got to have the melody in your head now. So what you'll hear is the chords. And can you play along with that and not get lost? And I think that would be a really good thing, a really good way for drummers to use this to practice with. But that's not using my tracks. That's using the stuff that's already on there. But that's, I think that could be a good way to do it.
Thanks, Buster. Thank you.
No worries. Anyone else? Because I'm going to have to wrap it up soon. I've got a young fella at the door waiting to come in for a drum lesson, but he can wait. He's early. It's okay. Hello, Howard. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Great lesson, thank you. Just very quickly, this guide tone term I hadn't heard of. Chord tone, but not guide tone. Can you very quickly just explain that?
So chord tones are the notes of the chord symbol, okay, and that could include the extensions. I mean, we're mostly working on 1, 3, 5, 7 here, but that can include extensions. A guide tone is when you take a chord tone and you go to the next nearest chord tone on the next chord. And then you do the same thing to the next nearest one. Generally speaking, they tend to go down like that. And what you'll find is certain notes tend to... So when we're talking about jazz standards, okay, because this doesn't always apply if we get to modal jazz or very contemporary music, but a lot of jazz standards use what we call cyclical harmony. So if you see a D chord followed by a G chord, then the next, it's a pretty good bet the next chord's going to be a C chord, right? Because we're going around the cycle a lot. 2 5 1s, 1 3 6 2 5 1, and all these kind of cadences are used all the time. It's part of the language and the ingredients of that music, which is essentially 1930s show tunes, right? So we get a lot of this cyclical harmony, and what that means is we tend to get a lot of similar events happening when one note moves to the next note of the next chord. Okay, so thirds and sevenths, for instance, it's just to do with how it works out kind of mathematically. There's a kind of formula there. Okay, and so if you can start to learn some of those and recognize those, what happens is then when you're improvising, and I think this is the real key to it, improvisers, experienced jazz musicians, don't think of each chord one chord at a time. And I think that's the main difference between the pros and the students. When you're a student, you're learning, you're looking at each chord and you're thinking, oh, what are the notes of that chord? What are the notes of that chord? What are the notes of that chord? And there's not time to do that. And this is why when you're improvising, you're probably finding, oh, I'm struggling here. You need to do that work in advance, that preparation work. And what jazz musicians do, that experienced jazz musicians do, is they essentially batch process. So they're looking at bunches of chords. So when they're looking at a tune, they're not looking at each bar separately, or even 2 chords per bar. They're looking at 4-bar phrases, or certainly 2 or 3 bars at a time, 4 bars usually, or even 8 bars, you know, on some level. And they've already worked on a lot of this preparation work. They already know that if I hit the 7th there and I go down a semitone, I'm going to be on the 3rd of that chord, because it's embedded in so much of this musical, this cyclical harmony. There's, as I was saying to Catherine, there's a lot of overriding kind of patterns and sequences, and once you get your head around a lot of that. So a guide tone is really useful if there's a lot of chords and they're moving pretty quickly. Instead of having to think vertically of every chord, if you know I'm going to start on the 3rd and just go down in semitones, and that's what you're doing, is you're creating a horizontal pathway through all those chord sequences, which simplifies the whole thing. Yeah, and also it sounds great because you're hitting, especially if you're doing thirds and sevenths, you're hitting very strong notes. You're hitting very strong chord tones as you go through, and that's what they call making the changes. You're making the changes and you're outlining it, but you've massively simplified the amount of data that there is to process. And these things are things that you learn. You need to learn them. You need to memorize them, know them. And again, we use the numbers because then we can do it in any key. So instead of thinking, oh, B flat goes to A, I'm thinking flat 7 goes to the 3rd, because that will work on in all 12 keys. That's not specific to one key. And I think that's, again, another, these are the formulas that and once you start to learn about that stuff, then you start to see it more in the music, and the whole thing starts, oh, that's that and that, and then you're batch processing. You're seeing bunches of chords as belonging together, and then you go, oh yeah, I see what happened there. It's just that, and then it's a bit on there, and then it goes, and this is where we talk about key centers and not key signatures. We don't pay a lot of attention to key signatures so much in terms of the whole thing's in a key, but when we look at key centers, we're batching the chords, and again that goes back to this practice. So these what I've called cadences and turnarounds. We're working in a key center. Okay, so if you just do a lot of work in one, and then you can isolate it, change the key, or I've got my sequences where it starts going through them all. That's that's definitely an exercise. You're not going to find any tune that goes 2-5-1 in all 12 keys. I mean, that's never going to happen. That's going to not really sound great at all. This is just, we're in the gym now. We're doing we're on the Peloton. That's quite a challenging thing to work on. Yeah. So, but this is the work. This is the work that you need to do, that then pays off when you start working on tunes. Then you've already got chunks of it already done. Yeah, does that make sense? Does that answer?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, guys. Unless anyone's got anything else. What's this saying? I've got a little thing. Oh, there's a couple of chats there. Thank you. Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay. Interesting cadence apart from 2-5-1. Yeah. So it's when it goes back to what I said before. Just then is the 2-5-1. We give 6-2-5-1, 3-6-2-5-1. They're all what we call cyclical harmonic cadences, the way the chords work, and then the different variations on the 2-5-1s. And it might seem like there's an awful lot there, but it's really the nuts and bolts of everything. And if you can get you can get familiar with what's there. There's a lot of stuff on there, but if you can get familiar, you'll see a lot of it's repeated, and you'll start to recognise these patterns, and then you'll find once you start thinking in that way, it's going to crop up all the time in this music. Good. Oh, that's very nice. Yeah, great workshop. Most useful thing I've done for ages. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Very kind. Well, you know, I'm really interested in the nuts and bolts of this music and how it works. So I think we're going to wrap it up. And obviously I've got to finish with an ad. So if you're not signed up, well, you are signed up to my mailing list now because you've got the download. So that will automatically put on my list. You can unsubscribe. It's fine. We won't fall out. But there's a lot of stuff that I send out. So if you're on the mailing list, you should get an email like once a week with a little clip. So a lot of my workshops that I do, so once a month, I do a whole new tune from scratch. I transcribe everything off the record. It looks like this. And then what we do is we go through it all. We take it to bits and we work on each section and we develop a very clear strategy for you to improvise with. So it's really like paint by numbers. And I give you, and we'll look at some of what they play, we'll transcribe, we'll look at some of their solo, we'll analyse it, we'll use bits of that, we'll use some licks, we'll use a lot of voice leadings. And we go and we really work, you know, we really get to know it by the end of it, and that's an hour every month. I do it live on Zoom, and then I also film it separately with a separate camera, high res, and then that goes on my website. And on my website now, there's a whole catalogue of the back library of all the classes, and I think it's about 80. I think we're up to 76 now, 77 workshops, and each one is a completely standalone class. It's 1 hour, and you get all the handouts, all the downloads. We do warm-ups, we do handouts and everything. I've got a VIP subscription now. You get the whole back catalogue, plus access to all my courses. So I've done a lot of musicianship courses. So again, if you go to my website, I've done things like ear training. I've done some musicianship things where we do some chords. I mean, a lot of this, I'm really big on musicianship skills. And I think that's, so again, today is really about that. So and then I've got scales and things where I play along with you. So there's a course on licks, there's major scales, like really learning your major scales, what I call the guided practice routines. So it's you and me, I'm playing the piano and you're playing with me, and we're doing it in real time and things like that. So there's a ton of stuff on my website, and you can unsubscribe at any time. It's just a 1 month subscription. It just keeps rolling. But there's an awful lot of stuff on there. But it's not just tunes. I've done a lot of stuff on the musicianship skills, which I think is the work you do, you need to work on every day. And I'm constantly adding to it. So there we go. And of course my books, go on Amazon, check me out. I've published 25 books. I've got 2 series on Amazon on improvising. There's a beginner improvising, and there's the rhythm changes soloing. I can't think of any more. It's a lot of stuff. Summer school, of course, that's all sold out. So yeah, I'm going to go now. And thank you all for tuning in. Don't be overwhelmed. Just do a little bit. Just do one thing, and do one thing for maybe a week. Just work on one thing. Don't try to do it all in one go. Just do a bit at a time and take your time. This is big thing, this music. But as you, like me, you know, I didn't know any of it. And you have these little moments, and it can be very frustrating at first, but you get these little moments where you get these little eureka moments, and little things connect. You go, oh, that's what he meant by that. Oh, I see now, you know. And that, when you get that, it's fantastic. It's the best feeling in the world, because it's like unlocking things, you know. And then the whole thing feeds back into itself, because you hear the music. Oh, I see what they did, and then you learn to appreciate the music more. Because there's nothing like watching these great musicians, and you go along and go, oh, I don't know what's going on. And then you spend a few hours trying to practice something, and then you hear them do it, and you go, oh, blimey, that's amazing, because that's really hard what he's doing. And you don't know that until you try and do it. Because when someone's very skillful, it's very underwhelming, because they make it look easy. It's not till you try it, then you can really appreciate it, you know. Anyway, that's me. All right, guys, have a nice weekend.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay in touch. You know, sign up. You're on the mailing list. Drop me a line if you want. I'm very happy to, if I've got time, and maybe see you on another workshop, or somewhere out there on the ether, and hopefully in real life somewhere on a gig maybe. Take care and have a great weekend. Cheerio. Bye bye.